Network. We are recap edition of the Ice Guys. Of course, July 28th last week was free agency day, and boy, we had a flurry of signings, no pun intended, very much so throughout the that day. Going into the tail end of last week, Alex B. Smith with me. Hopefully, Jimmy Murphy will be along with us momentarily as well, and we'll look back on all the major free agent signings that were made. I'll just start really with just some teams more than just individual signings. We got New Jersey Devils, of course, bring in Dougie Hamilton from the Carolina Hurricanes, a huge deal, 7 years, $63 million. And they also get Ryan Graves from the Colorado Avalanche. I like what New Jersey's doing. They have to shore up and make that blue line better. They definitely did that. The New Jersey Devils, that was always an issue for them going into last season. So some nice signings for them. We know the Tampa Bay Lightning, are a team that has had to navigate their way through all kinds of salary cap hell, but they did it significantly, circumventing the rules, you could say. Julian Brisebois with the long-term injury reserve, little way of sidestepping the cap last year that they used to their advantage. But nevertheless, the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, re-signing Braden Point, getting him locked up. Of course, Tyler Johnson. You can't sign everybody. Tyler Johnson going to the Chicago Blackhawks, of course, which was a mild surprise. Not so much that he was gone, but the destination team ended up being the Chicago Blackhawks, who all of a sudden, we'll get to them in just a second, look like a team that's making that one last run, if you will, maybe at not just the playoffs, but maybe the cup with some of the moves they made, including, of course, bringing in Fleury. But you look at what Tampa Bay, they, of course, had to say goodbye to some of their key players with the cap situation, the way that it was for them. Yanni Gourde gets taken by Seattle, by the Kraken. Blake Coleman gone. He goes to the Calgary Flames. Barclay Goodrow to the New York Rangers. So you knew Tampa Bay was going to lose some key cogs from that Stanley Cup team, and they did that. Colorado, of course, we were all very skeptical if Gabe Landeskog would be returning to the Colorado Avalanche, but he does. A last minute decision to re-sign 8 years for Gabe Landeskog, the captain of the Avalanche. What was shocking was Philip Grubauer signing elsewhere and going to the Seattle Kraken, and left Colorado absolutely positively scrambling. You can't go into next season with Francouz as your number one guy, or Johansson. You had to shore up the goaltending, and they did that very well, actually, with Darcy Kemper, getting him right after losing Philip Grubauer. So Colorado shores that up. So shocking to see Philip Grubauer to Seattle, and now all of a sudden the Kraken, set in net. You would think this season Grubauer and Drieger is all of a sudden a very nice punch there. Marc-Andre Fleury going to the Chicago Blackhawks, of course. Making Alex B. Smith happy. He's still on a euphoria and a high, and he hasn't come down yet from it for these last couple of days. But Marc-Andre Fleury to the Chicago Blackhawks, and now all of a sudden and Jake McCabe to the Blackhawks. People are going to say, what? Why are you bringing up that? That's a good signing, Jake McCabe. Jake McCabe's a good defenseman. He's just stuck on a miserable organization and team for the last few years, the Buffalo Sabres. You get him to Chicago. He's good in his own zone. It's a nice addition. I think Chicago has really done things to improve that blue line. So I'll start with just those teams. Those are my initial thoughts. Those are the ones that I think made a lot of noise in free agency. Alex, just some initial thoughts, teams, moves they made overall, some individual players that moved, just some thoughts on some of the signings that stuck out to you.
Well, I mean, we have to lead off with the Chicago Blackhawks,
of course.
The moves that they made, and it's funny. The last show we did, recapping the expansion draft and the regular draft, I wore the Stan Bowman clown shirt. We're not wearing that shirt anymore for a while because Stan has done an excellent job for a change in the last couple of weeks. Like I said, the Marc-Andre Fleury, there were rumors of him possibly being traded somewhere. And someone threw out Chicago about a couple of weeks ago. Sure enough, it ended up happening. Then everyone's worried about, he doesn't want to move his family. Is he going to just, up and retire, which would have made total sense. Obviously, this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer, played a ton of games. He's won cups. The way things ended unceremoniously in Vegas, kind of wondered, okay, maybe he wants to go out on his own terms, have one last run, and now he's in a great spot with a team that, like I said, they're reloading. They're not rebuilding yet. And now he had the chance to, mentor a young up-and-coming goalie in Kevin Lankinen while still being the number one goalie. He's not taking a backseat role like a Jonathan Quick in LA or some of these other goalies we've seen over the years where they're kind of just left hanging around to try to help the younger guys move forward, but they don't really have much game left. This guy just won the Vezina Trophy. So it's a great situation. Seth Jones, made a great trade there. I think the signing, gave him a little bit of extra money, but obviously if you look at all the other defensemen that were signed and moved around, the going rate was around 7 to 8 million, 9 million a year. So 9.5 to lock him down. They did what they had to do. Obviously, had to move Adam Boquist, a kid who's going to be a great star in this league. Hate to see him go, but you have to crack some eggs to make an omelet, basically. So I think that was a great trade. Like I said, Jake McCabe, a great fit, a stay-at-home defenseman, something that the Hawks have needed for a long time. Think about Nicholas Hjalmarsson, who retired. He was that kind of guy for the Hawks during their cup runs early in the decade. And so to have, maybe he can grow into that. Like I said, he's been in a tough situation in Buffalo. Obviously, things should be a little bit better in Chicago right now. And of course, Jonathan Toews, if he's feeling fully healthy and ready, he's pretty much like a free agent addition when you think about it. And also Patrick Kane. Keep in mind, for all the great numbers he had last year, he played through an injury the entire season. So now if he can be healthy and rested, the Hawks team looks loaded and ready to make one more run. I've been using the hashtag one last more goal. I think that might be the case for them, especially when you look at Colorado. I don't like the fact that they got Darcy Kemper. They had to do something, obviously, but he's an injury-prone goalie. Francouz has become an injury-prone goalie. So they're in the same boat now they had in the last 2 seasons. If one or two of these guys get hurt, they got to ride with Jonas Johansson or Hunter Miska down in the minors. That's going to be troublesome in this division. Like I said, you got Minnesota, who's made a turnaround, and it still could be a dangerous team. The Hawks are going to be a more dangerous team. Dallas, those guys were all beat up and banged up last year. They're going to be healthy. They're going to be a tougher team. You'll still have St. Louis in that mix as well. So, it's not going to be a duck walk for the Colorado Avalanche. So if Kemper's not fully healthy, things could get a bit iffy for them. Another team where moves I like how LA was moving forward. And I talked about this at the end of the season. The fact that now that they have Philip Deneau, who had a wonderful postseason, has really, matured into a solid, two-way center, but he thinks he's more of a defensive-minded guy, a face-off guy. You had Victor Arvidsson in the trade. It just seems like a team that, they're slowly building toward being a good hockey team again, a contender in that Pacific, especially when you got teams like Anaheim and San Jose still dwelling at the bottom. We don't know what we're going to see from Seattle yet, although they look like they're going to be a good team. I don't think it's going to be the Vegas story all over again. Of course, you got Las Vegas at the top. Edmonton, I think they might be taking a step down with the moves that they made. Of course, they got Duncan Keith, and now, they've re-signed Mike Smith. Wonder if they're going to be giving goals galore. They're going to have to start winning games 6-5, 7-6. It seems like the way their lineup is built. So LA made some good moves. They're going to be a quality team and a pesky team, probably a good bet on team as a dog during the season. So those are the 2 teams that I've liked the most: the Hawks and the Kings.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Kings for sure. I think that there's some things to like with them. I think from a sell perspective, teams that look like they're waving the white, Arizona certainly is. I mean, they look like they're going in for a long-term rebuild with what they've done in this offseason. Of course, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, among others, gone now. It's kind of a little bit of an exodus. Kemper gone. And now you look at that team maybe looking to rebuild a little bit. We'll bring Jimmy Murphy in, who's with us now, and we'll get his thoughts on teams that made an impression, either improved their team, got significantly worse, some individual signings he likes. He can talk about Boston. A lot of waves have been made there. Krejci gone. Taylor Hall re-signed. Tuukka Rask's future with the team very much in doubt at this point in time, especially when you go out and get a Linus Ullmark, along with to be there with Swayman is what you're looking at to begin the season, because Rask is not even close to being able to play, even if the Boston Bruins want him back. So there's questions galore with them. So Jimmy, have at it. Free agency, first impressions on what went down.
Yeah, I guess I'll start, with the team I cover here. And you mentioned all the things that happened with the Bruins there. I think the biggest takeaway I have, and it's something I've been pointing out for a while, but, nobody seems to want to pay attention to here in Boston because everybody's always too caught up in the present, is, how did Don Sweeney, with all the cap money he had 28.4 heading into free agency, with some of the, I know he doesn't have too many trade assets, but he still has some. How is he sitting today with his pants caught down when it comes to the center position right now, with no number 2 center all of a sudden, and a number 1 center that, let's be honest, guys, if he was not in Boston and not skating with Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, I think is really a number 2 center at this point in his career, and that's Patrice Bergeron. And you guys know how much I love Patrice. That's not a knock on him as a person. It's just father time catches up, and this is a guy that's gone through a lot of injuries. And then you factor in right now what we're about to see, and I'm telling you guys, I've said this before, get ready. By December, there are going to be a ton of big names on the injury list. I guarantee it, because these bodies have gone through so much. Think about what they had the 1920 season. It was weird. They had the pause. Then they went back into the bubble. So all those teams that went in the bubble played those games. And then not even 2.5 months later, they're playing a 56 condensed game schedule and then the playoffs. So, for teams that went, I'd say, second round to beyond in this playoffs, they're going to have a lot of injury issues. And I think the Boston Bruins are going to be one of those. And I think Bergeron's about to break down. I really do. And maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe he drinks the Tom Brady juice and says, screw you to Father Time. I don't know. But I'm just looking at it realistically here. So that's the biggest thing that I came away. I like some of the signings that Sweeney made. I think Foligno will bring some leadership. But then again, it's kind of, to me, it's like it's doing David Backes all again. You got him 1 or 2 years after his prime. I don't know. It was really interesting. I just think that he could have used the market better. And I think we spoke about it the last time we talked too, was how it struck me when I asked him heading into the expansion draft, have you been busy on the NHL trade market for defensemen? Because we all know they need a top 4 LD. And he's like, I haven't even started calling people. What? I mean, you're going into the expansion draft, man. Like this should all be laid out by that time. So I think Don Sweeney, look, he's usually a very calculated guy, but for some reason or another, he just misread the whole David Krejci situation, and that really could haunt the Bruins going forward. As for teams that impress me, I'm with you guys. I love what the LA Kings are doing. I think it's going to continue. They need some D-men, though. That's their big thing, and I was a little surprised that we didn't see a notable defenseman added to that roster in LA. And I like the Deneau signing, a little high on the cap hit, but the way things are going and where his name's at, his reputation, that's what's going to happen there. I'm surprised that Canadians let him go. I really am. And I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me, guys, but if I'm not mistaken, was it just a little bit higher or just a little bit lower than what the Canadians reportedly offered him last year? Do we know?
I believe it was a little bit higher.
Okay, but not much. Well, it wasn't much of a difference. So my point is, if you can offer him what you did last year, why was that taken off the table after the playoffs he had and how important he was in that cup run to Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final? So I thought it was a little surprising there that Montreal didn't do more. Like Hoffman's all right. I don't know. There's a reason he's been on 3 teams in 4 years. You got to start asking questions there. Yep. The one team I really like, and I don't think they're done by any means, is the Flyers. I love everything they did. They said they were going to shake it up, and they did. And guys, we spoke about it back on this show heading into the deadline. I told you Verasik's name was out there. He didn't get moved then, but he got moved this time. And that was the big shakeup move that I heard they were going to make. And look, this is a Flyers team now, too. You look what they added to the defense there. It's just I really like what Fletcher did there. I really do. And then I also like, and it's kind of flying under the radar because I know we're talking about signings and player personnel, but same time, check out some of the moves they just made in hockey management. I mean, they had brought in D. Lombardi back a couple months ago, and then they bring back the guys they did yesterday. This is a team that means business. So they're going back the other way. The one thing I had heard, Alex, and you'll get a kick out of this, and this probably would have had you talking a little different about the Blackhawks. The one thing I heard was that the Flyers tried to get Fleury. And can you imagine the shitstorm that would have created in Pittsburgh if they got Fleury in Philly? Yeah. And it would have been a brilliant move if you think about it, right? Because you bring him in, you had the cap space to do it, you bring him in, and would he not be the perfect elixir for what happened with Carter Hart last year?
Definitely.
You said how he's going to
help him out. Yeah.
Yeah. You said the mentoring he'll do in Chicago. Think about what he could have done for Carter Hart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a guy where they needed a better veteran, I think, to come in. I like what they did, but that would have been something, I'll tell you. And then, I look at the Colorado Avalanche. I agree with you. I mean, when when it went down to the wire, you should have had something better than Darcy Kemper in the back pocket there. I don't know what's going on there. Like it's interesting. I think that right now Colorado is another one of these teams who maybe misevaluated where they were going cap wise and let things slide a little too long there. So similar to Don Sweeney, I think Joe Sakic got caught a little bit with his pants down. Team, I think, is going under the radar that nobody's talking about, and I thought they had a great offseason. They added value picks, what I like to say, value players, not necessarily the big superstars, but that's the Vancouver Canucks. I like what they did. I think those were some smooth moves. It was time for Edler to go. They got some new defensemen, and I don't think they're done either. And if you look at them up the middle right now, when healthy, I'd say they're the deepest team at center in the Pacific Division right now. So that's a team I think you keep an eye on. I like the Blake Coleman pickup in Calgary. I thought the Wild did okay as well. Loved what the Detroit Red Wings are doing. I know we're not going to talk about them. They're not going to make the playoffs, but guys, there's some shrewd moves going on by Stevie Y there. So Pius Suter, am I pronouncing it Suter like Ryan Suter? Yeah, Pius Suter. That is a great under the radar signing by Stevie Y in Detroit. So they're headed in the right direction. And speaking of the Suters, who the hell does Ryan Suter think he is dictating 4 years for term? I'll tell you, he's a smart guy. He's smarter than me because I had no idea he would get that. But Dallas was dumb enough to step up and give it to him. So kudos to Ryan Suter, but bad move by Dallas. That's the end.
There you go. Great analysis. Hitting a bunch of teams.
Sorry to ramble, guys.
No, that's all right. That's good. I mean, Ryan Suter, you're right. I don't want Ryan Suter at this stage of his career. I just don't.
That's why I'd rather Keith Yandle for 1 year at $900,000 than Ryan Suter for the term and money he got. Yeah, especially for that. For that term and the money amount that he got from the Dallas Stars, which I thought was astronomical, considering what we've. This is a guy that's on the tail end of his career. You're not getting prime of his career Ryan Suter now. So to pay a premium for that, it doesn't make any sense to me. Look at their stats, guys. Ryan Suter and Keith Yandle's stats. I mean, Suter's just slightly better. They almost match up perfectly. Mm-hmm. And you look at the age too. I mean, Suter's got 2 years on Yandle. So I just look at that. It's such a smart signing by Fletcher compared to, surprisingly, by one of the smartest guys in the business. Just a bad signing in my eyes by Jim Nill.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's strange to see with the goaltending issue in Dallas too. I mean, they're
now Udobin's out.
Yeah, right. I guess so. I mean, and then Bishop, we don't know what to expect from him. He's had injury issues. Didn't play all of last year. Is he going to be fully healthy and ready? And if he is, can he stay healthy? That's the question mark there too. So, were you going to move him somewhere? Jake Ottinger seems to be the future. It looked really good. So I don't know what they're going to do. Once things start to get wrong.
Well, they got to move somebody because they have 4 goalies on their roster right now. Jake Ottinger, Anton Udobin, Braden Holtby, and Ben Bishop. I mean, there's someone is getting moved. It's just a question. And you would think it's got to be part ways with Bishop because he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But again, we'll have to wait and see on that. Or do they, say goodbye to Udobin because he's the guy that's he's an old goalie as well. You gotten a lot from him, but last year, it was up and down for him. Ottinger probably is your future in net. I think you got to try to commit. I think he's got to play more games than he did last year. You got to see what you got in him. So, you got to part ways with at least 1 or 2 of these older goalies. They're all older goalies, Udobin, Holtby, and Bishop on this Dallas team. So going to be interesting to see what decisions they make. I think we talked a little on the expansion draft recap show because that was the day that Detroit got Nedeljkovic. But I'm going to re-emphasize my opinions on Detroit. The arrow's pointing up on this team. There's no question about that. And I'm not saying playoffs this season, but I am saying competitive. They will be. They will not be an easy team to beat this year. You look at what they've got. You mentioned it, Jimmy. Pius Suter, bringing him in. Jacob Vrana, of course, was a great pickup. Played great for them when they got him from Washington with St. Anthony Mantha the other way. Dylan Larkin, Vladdy Nemesnikov. Zadina really started to show. Adam Ernie gave them some offense in the second half of last year. You look at what they've done on the blue line as well. With Stetcher, Mark Stahl, Nick Leddy brought in. I mean, a nice blue line. You've got a legit number 1 for not just this season, but many years to come. And Alex Nedeljkovic, I'm a believer in that guy as a good number 1 goalie in this league. This is a Detroit team that's going to make us some money, or at least going to make me some money this year. I think there's going to be some good spots, good prices. And I think in profitability next year in the NHL, we always see it. Profitability rankings, teams that have won the most units for their backers, teams that have lost the most units for their backers throughout the course of the season. I think Detroit's going to be a top 10. Hell, they could even be a top 5 profitability team next season, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. They're right in that wheelhouse with LA, and we talked about Ottawa as well. Teams that are going to be, competitive enough to win you some money. Then, like I said, not going to be immediate playoff contenders, but they're going to be, you're going to be able to find some good spots. Especially now, we talk about it, how everything's getting back to a normal 82 game schedule, the travel spots and different things that we didn't have last year. We're going to be able to cash in with some of those little spots. So I'm definitely looking forward to betting on, like I said, these teams that will definitely be dogs, and the books may not adjust to them quick enough.
And funny, I just mentioned Nedeljkovic, and it feels like it's the perfect segue in time to bring up the team that he departed from, the Carolina Hurricanes. And I said it on Twitter, and maybe they're not going to completely fall off a cliff this upcoming season, but I was only half joking. I was half serious when I tweeted it at the time. Well, it was nice for the one season last year that Carolina was a legit Stanley Cup contender. We enjoyed it while it lasted. I've got some issues going into this season. This is clearly an organization, and Tom Dundon, the owner, obviously he's the one that makes the final decisions on finances, that's clearly established themselves as, we're going to go on the cheap. We're going to cheap out. We're going to chintz out, in order to save a few bucks and not do what's necessary maybe to put the best possible team and product on the ice. Because for them to get rid of Alex Nedeljkovic and send him to Detroit and not pay I thought the decent enough amount of money that I think they could have afforded for, but they just didn't pay it for him. And now you're rolling into next season with Freddie Anderson with injury issues galore, with age getting older, and you're not getting younger, you're only getting older if you're him. Games under his belt a ton, lack of playoff success with the Leafs in recent years. Now, a lot of that's the team around him. I get it, but there's question marks there a little bit about playoff success for him. To replace Nedeljkovic with Freddie Anderson at this stage of his career, and then you've got Antti Raanta, who's good, really good, but another older goalie and can't stay healthy. And Alex Lyon, you've gone basically from Nedeljkovic and Mrazek last season, 2 terrific goalies. And by the way, good job, Toronto, bringing in Peter Mrazek to go with Jack Campbell. Good job. It was really good by them. But for Carolina to go from Alex Nedeljkovic and Peter Mrazek to Freddie Anderson, who was he going to play, 50, 60 games this year without injury? We don't know. And what's he going to do at playoff time when he hasn't had much playoff success? We don't know. Antti Raanta, good goalie when he's in there, but how often is he going to be in there? And then Alex Lyon, it goes without saying, he's shown you absolutely nothing at the NHL level. I mean, their goaltending is a huge issue for me. Their blue line's still very good, so they're going to need that blue line to just block a shit ton of shots, be in good position, give their goalies every opportunity to succeed, and maybe they're capable of it. I do like the blue line still with Shea and with Ian Cole and with Ethan Bear. They brought him in from Carolina, from Edmonton, Brett Pesce. They took a shot with the problem child known as Tony DeAngelo from the New York Rangers to see if they can rehabilitate his career. I still like, obviously, Svechnikov, Aho, Trocheck, Niederreiter up front. Still, forwards are good, top 6. Defense is still pretty good. But when you've got that many question marks with your goaltending going into next season like Carolina does, it's hard not to see them taking a step back, in my opinion, next season. Alex, what are your thoughts on Carolina? To me, what they've done with their goaltending is one of the most baffling, inexplicable things I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, it made absolutely no sense for them. Like I said, getting rid of Nedeljkovic the way that they did, and basically saying they didn't want to sign him for over an extra $3 million. But then you bring in, 2, veterans who command more money, can't stay healthy, have been streaky their whole careers. It made zero sense. And now when you look at that Metropolitan Division with teams like Philadelphia, like the moves they made, but still the goaltending, we're waiting to see if Carter Hart can bounce back. And we know the story on Martin Jones. You look at Pittsburgh still got DeSmith and Jari, and now Carolina. We're going to see a lot of overs with these Metro Division teams early in the season. That's something I have circled already, looking forward to the beginning of this year. I think we're going to see a lot of these teams have issues in their back end and with their goaltending. And Carolina's going to be one of them. Carolina, pretty much going to be one of those teams, like you said, they're going to have to score 5 or 6 goals every night to win a game potentially, especially if Anderson starts off struggling like he did toward the end of his run to Toronto. And if Ronte can't stay healthy, they don't have anything in the cupboard with the Wolves and the AHL. Like, this was a deep organization when they had Nedeljkovic down back when they were in Charlotte in the AHL. They don't have that kind of depth at goal right now. So they could be in some serious trouble. Just like I said with Colorado, they have injury issues early. Things could get out of hand quickly for them.
And Freddie Anderson's a perennial slow starter. Like Freddie Anderson's always had rough Octobers, rough Novembers, rough Decembers, rough first halves of the season. It usually takes him a solid couple of months to really get in the flow, get in the groove, be playing at his absolute best. And that's another thing. So especially early in the season next year for the Carolina Hurricanes, an over team, a team that's going to play their share of 5-3, 5-4 games. I could absolutely see it. Jimmy, we'll get you to chime in and some thoughts on this Carolina team. Isn't it mind-boggling what they've done?
Very mind-boggling. I'm glad you called out the owner, Tom Dundon, there, because I think that's all this is. And he's full of shit when he keeps telling us that this team is making money and they're not in trouble. I mean, it's clear they are. So, it's something to watch there in the bigger picture of the NHL is where this team is financially in a year or two. And maybe somehow Quebec gets a team again. But we'll see. Anyways, I don't understand it. Puzzling to me. I don't know what's going on down there right now. And, if you're Brindamore, you got to be looking at it and say, man, I just re-upped with you guys. And this is how you handle the off season. I mean, we're close. We're really close right now. One thing I think that I liked for Carolina is something they didn't do. And that's re-sign Dougie Hamilton. And I'm glad, whether it was their choice or his, I think in the long run, they're better off without him, especially at that money that he got paid by the New Jersey Devils, who I forgot to mention earlier, who I've been really high on because I knew they were trying to do some big things there with the cap space they had. That was not a Tom Fitzgerald sign. And I'm telling you that right now, guys, that is fact. That was ruled down from above by an ownership group that pays more attention to the analytics guys than to the all-around hockey guys. And that is going to be a problem going forward for the New Jersey Devils if they want to ever become a contender again. I'm sorry. You can throw all the great analytics for Dougie Hamilton at me that you want. There's a reason he's on his 4th team in 6 years. He's not a good teammate, and he doesn't play well when it counts. So, it's just interesting that was the one move that I actually agree with was the one they didn't make. But, that Metro division is going to be crazy, guys. And I think, you look at the Rangers too. The Rangers are going to be stacked.
Yeah,
and
like that.
Trying hard to get Jack Eichel. I mean, they made some good additions as well. And, you think the goaltending is going to be a little better this year. So they got a new coach. So I think that, the Rangers are a better team. The Islanders are still the Islanders. And by all accounts, they've got Palmieri and Parise locked up. And they're just trying, from what I hear, they're trying to see if they can get Tarasenko or not there. So, they're going to add, they're going to still have some good quality there. And we already mentioned the Flyers. This is the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, maybe took a step back if we're going to look at that division. And they could be in for some overs there if Jerry continues the way he was going last year. So I think you guys are right when you say that this could be the over division.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. You're right about the Rangers. I've been singing their praises. They're going to be they're going to be much better. I project them to be playoff bound next season in Gerard Gallant's first year. He's a guy that's had a track record of first year with Florida. What did they do? They were great. First year with Vegas, Stanley Cup final. I mean, for expansion team, it doesn't take him long to improve the team. Like first year, he can have immediate improvement with the team he coaches. He's shown that in the past. Lafreniere will be better. He's going to have a really big season. I know it was hit or miss for him last year, but he'll be fine. Second year, he'll be more comfortable. Zibanejad, Kravtsov, they've got lots of high hopes for that kid. Panarin, Goodrow was a great signing. Barclay Goodrow from the champion Lightning, Stanley Cup winning experience. Ryan Strome had a better year for sure last year. And don't look now, forgotten man, Capo Caco. Remember him? Second overall pick. He got it going down the stretch last year. They get his offense going. This team's going to score in bunches. The blue line, Keandre Miller, Adam Fox. You got 2 legit blue liners to build around. They're going to be good. Trouba's solid. Anthony Boteto, Lindgren on a third pair is decent. Labor Hayek, they have high hopes for him. So there's a lot to like here with this Rangers blue line. And then, of course, Shesterkin and net with Georgiev's a great 1-2 punch, in my opinion.
I don't think they're done either, guys. They're still very much in the hunt for Jack Eichel. I still really think he might end up there.
Yeah, there are a bunch of teams linked to him. The Terry Edelman's Minnesota Wild have even been linked a little bit
Yeah.
to Jack Eichel. So there's a bunch of teams in the mix for him. And by the way, we'll get to Buffalo now because this is getting nasty right now between the Sabres and the Jack Eichel camp.
Yep.
Yeah.
No other way around it. It's getting nasty. I think it's personal now. I think this is just, it's unfortunate because you're seeing this really become more of not just business anymore. It's almost like it's personal. Like we're trying to do everything in our power to brick wall and stonewall this guy, essentially is what it looks like on both sides, are pissed off at the other. It's very ugly. And from a Sabres standpoint, just from their team standpoint, I mean, you look at the fact, obviously Sam Reinhart's gone and Jack Eichel ain't going to be there anymore. Now you'll fetch a nice return for him. But as of right now, this roster, they look like they're just going to be right back where they were next season, one of the worst teams in the NHL. No, this roster, I mean, is just piss poor. I mean, Olofsson and Middlestat on a top line with Bjork. I mean, Asplund, Cousins, Inestroza, second line, Tage Thompson, Eakin, and Skinner, who did a terrible year by his standards last year. That forward group's nothing to write home about. Dahlin, Jokiharju, Butcher, Bryson, Pissick, Robert Hagg from the Flyers. That's not enough to move the needle. And their goaltending, my gosh, their goaltending situation. Two old, over-the-hill, retread goalies, and you're going to have to probably start one of them. Craig Anderson, Farmer in the Dell, Aaron Dell, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is probably the best prospect you got right now in terms of goaltending, and he wasn't very good in minimal NHL duty last year. And, of course, Dustin Tokarski, who's been, AHL goalie for the large part of his career the last several years. So this roster's just, it makes you want to reach for the vomit bag, to be honest with you, when you look at it. Oh, my gosh. Buffalo, wow. I mean, they better hope they get a freaking amazing return and hit a home run on this Jack Eichel deal. Simple as that. Because they need something to replenish this roster. It is broken. This roster's broken. The defense ain't any good outside of Dahlin, assuming he can bounce. And Dahlin didn't even play that good last year. He's got to bounce back. The forwards give you nothing outside of Middlestat and Olofsson. There's not much. Cousins I like. Cousins will be good. But after that, there's a huge drop-off. And then the goaltending's hideous. I mean, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, it's just you're pounding your head against the wall as a fan of this team. It's the same old shit year in and year out. Jimmy, I mean, you're on top of this this kind of stuff with Eichel. I mean, it's like the gloves are off. It's like we've got a hockey fight breaking out right now off the ice in terms of this bitter, contentious situation between Jack Eichel, his agents, his camp, and the Buffalo Sabres organization right now.
Yeah, well, now we're seeing writers take sides and really most of them going siding with the Sabres because they figure they're going to have to deal with them a lot. But it's clear. I called out Mike Harrington yesterday for a column he wrote. And look, Mike's a respected veteran journalist, but I mean, he let himself be a complete mouthpiece for ownership there with what he wrote, taking down the agents of Jack Eichel. Those agents had every reason to say what they said. If this guy wants to get the surgery done that he wants to get done on his neck and his back, then that's his right. That's his right. And he's had multiple doctors under the law of the CBA. He's able to go and get second and third opinions. And he's had every other opinion other than the Buffalo Sabres say that he should get the one that he wants. So, this is just the Sabres being jerks and thinking they're smarter than everyone else. And you say maybe they'll get him, hopefully they can get an amazing return. That ship sailed, Ian. There is that guy's value goes down by the minute right now because they held on to him too long and they asked for the world and misread the market. And when they misread it, even though they knew they misread it, they didn't adjust, and they're not adjusting, and they're just being stubborn and they're being childish. And it's just another reflection of the worst ownership group in the NHL and maybe probably top 5 worst owners in pro sports. And that's the Pagulers, a disgrace. And now they're talking about moving the Bills.
Oh, don't get me started on that. You're worth $5.4 billion, man. The new stadium is $1.5 billion. Don't you dare stand there, sit there, whatever, and say you can't foot a dime of that new stadium. That's a disgrace.
Yeah. Screw them.
Show you're a Buffalo guy and put your own damn money out there to fund that stadium. Period.
Yeah. So it's become a disgrace all around. And I think we've had this discussion many times, when you look at a sport and the team's going bad, chances are it's usually the shit trickling down, and it's trickling and trickling and trickling. And it's all the way into the dressing room, probably even to people that are kids that are drafted by the Sabres. Probably like, oh man, really? I got drafted by the Sabres. It's just a mess right now. And They need to get this done once and for all, and take the best possible offer on the table right now and trade Jack Eichel and be done with it and move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really bad all around. I mean, it's just the team's going to be a disaster again this year. You're not even going to get top return for Jack Eichel because you've waited around too long, you've dicked around too long, and now all of a sudden, teams aren't going to grovel to you. You're going to have to grovel to them now.
Yeah,
simple
and
as
they
that.
won't release the medical records.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously teams are going to be skeptical and not give you what you want if they don't know what they're getting.
Yep.
And they don't know how the surgery is going to go. If the Sabres did it right, they should have let Jack do the surgery he wanted already before the offseason began, right? They had plenty of time because they were way out of it before anyone else.
Yep.
They should have done that, got that over with, get the results, see how he's skating, see how he's maneuvering in practices, and they would have got much better value. But now you've painted yourself into a corner. You got to just accept your fate and move on.
Yeah, absolutely right. There's no question. The situation's ugly there. And like I say, the Pagulas have obviously butchered the Sabres from the beginning. The one thing they had in their corner was the Bills and the fact they're a winning team now. And perhaps in a great stretch now for the next few years, they'll be competing for Super Bowls.
Yep.
Now the stadium stuff comes down the pike, which is just another black eye toward them, in my opinion. So it's just rough times right now all around. And the Pagulas, you're right. They're making their case that, hey, they are not cut out for pro sports team ownership. They're not cut out for that. The more we see of it. Alex, I mean, you can chime in on this with Eichel. The Buffalo roster looks awful going into next season. I mean, it just looks like it's going to be more nightmares for Sabres fans.
Yeah, I can tell you that right now, the day that the season point totals come out, I will be betting them under. This team may not win more than 20, 21 games. It's absolutely awful. And the goaltending, I have them ranked as the worst goalie. I haven't done my goalie rankings fully yet, but they are 32nd in the league right now. When you talk about Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell as your number one and number two, they couldn't carry an AHL team to a 500 record. So this is going to be a nightmare. Like I said, if they can't move Eichel, or they wait for him to get the surgery. I mean, what are they waiting for? Like, we're only up 2 months away for the season starting. So, even if you weren't trying to hold on to him, he's got to have the surgery. It's not going to take 8 to 10 weeks for him to be fully healthy. It's just going to take a while. So the next surgery, like I said, you never know how these things can play out and go. The rehab could be longer or what have you. And the fact that he doesn't want to be there, even when he does come back, it's still a bad omen all around. So this is disastrous for Buffalo. And I'm guessing at this point, they're probably just going to say fuck it, and they want to lose as many games so they can get the first overall pick again and try to rebuild. They're basically in the same kind of circle of purgatory that the Edmonton Oilers were in 10, 15 years ago. They're going to be one of those teams that probably ends up having multiple, top 5, top 3 draft picks, but then they still may not get anywhere. I mean, look at where Edmonton is right now. How far have they really come, despite all the talent that they've drafted throughout that stretch. So, like I said, it's a town and an organization where they're going to probably struggle to bring in free agents, especially the way that they handle the situation. And that's the one thing we didn't get to really talk about. We can kind of segue into it with Vegas, how they treated Marc-Andre Fleury. That's going to be something that, free agents are going to probably look at and say, hey, they treated a guy who was the franchise face, a Hall of Famer like this. How are they going to, deal with me? And so Buffalo and Vegas might be, for different reasons, could have, it's a bad look for them for different reasons, but it could be the same issue when they're trying to sign guys moving forward, in the next couple of years.
I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury not even alerted that he was traded. A guy that's done so much for Vegas and beloved in the city. The fan base adores Marc-Andre Fleury there, and that's a guy you don't even tell he's traded before it happens. That's shocking.
And then the excuse of that, well, it already leaked on Twitter, so we didn't have to call him. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. That was amazing that it came to that, and that actually happened with how that ended with Marc-Andre Fleury, no question. We'll wrap up in a bit. I just want to wrap a couple odds and ends briefly for me, quick hitters on some teams. Montreal, Hoffman, I got to wait and see because you're right. To Jimmy's point earlier, he's bounced around team to team. That's not usually a good sign. I like David Savard brought in. Very nice. That was a very good move by the Montreal. He had to address the blue line. Shea Weber, of course, not back anytime, may not even play again. Shea Weber at this point. So you had to address the blue line and the hole that would lead, especially now you don't want it all to fall on the shoulders of Petrie and Sherratt and Edmondson. So getting David Savard was a nice move. Toronto, Philly first. Cam Atkinson, you're right. Cam Atkinson for Voracek. I mean, I think they're getting a good player, Philly and Cam Atkinson. Good offensive player, can fit in that top 6. We'll see if JVR can bounce back, have a better offensive season. They're going to score more goals this year, Philly, What can their blue line do is the big question, though. I mean, there's still a little bit suspect back there. And Carter Hart to bounce back, that's a big if. Can he regain that phenom, status that he had a few years ago? But it was a nightmare for him last year. And I'll tell you what, Alex made the point where Jimmy mentioned that the Flyers were interested in Fleury and said how nice mentorship it could have been for Carter Hart. The only thing Martin Jones is going to be able to mentor Carter Hart to do in Philadelphia is how to basically treat the puck like a beach ball and not be able to stop it. That's the only mentoring Martin Jones will do for Carter Hart. So you talk about almost having Fleury with Carter Hart and having Martin Jones instead. Whoa, talk about a big difference. And so it better be a good bounce back year for Carter Hart, because if it ain't, Martin Jones ain't taking you anywhere. He's not taking you to no promised land. So that's going to be the key for Philly. It's all going to come down to Hart next year. The blue line's got to be better too, but especially Carter Hart. Kraken, we talked a lot about them in the expansion draft, so I won't go into too much detail, but I like their roster defensively and goaltending. They're going to be tough to beat. They're going to keep games low scoring. It's not going to be easy to score on them. Yeah, they got to work on their offense a little bit, but look, right now, that's going to be a tough team to play against. I'll even briefly mention Toronto before we wrap it up here. They're totally cap strapped. There's no question about that. There's no secret of that. So they couldn't do much. But what they did do is they gambled on a couple low risk, high reward signings. That's essentially what the Leafs did. They bring in Michael Bunting. He had a good year for Arizona. Can he contribute for them? That's going to be a question. But, a low cost, potentially high reward signing. Look, Andre Kasha could be a good player, but he's like peanut brittle and cotton candy and plastic body parts at this point. He can't stay healthy. That's what the Bruins had to deal with Andre Kasha. So they take a chance on him. This is a guy that scored 20 goals in a season before. I don't mind that. Low risk, high reward for a team strapped against the cap for Toronto. And Nick Ritchie is a nice little signing by the Leafs as well. Again, he's a guy that was part of that Bruins group. Good environment to be with. Can be that kind of guy that you can hope for good things at playoff time from him. So a couple of those, like they couldn't do much in terms of, they can't make a big splash, not in the salary cap hell that they're in, but they made a couple low risk, potential for high reward signings that I can live with them if you're Toronto, to try to finally help that team get over the hump and finally win a playoff series. Of course, this is all moot point. It's going to come down again to Matthews and Marner doing things in the playoffs next year that they absolutely didn't do, in the first round against Montreal this past year. But for Kyle Dubas, given the fact his hands are tied, he's like handcuffed right now, a couple low-risk, high-reward signings, cheap money, but a potential for these guys to really deliver positives for the team if they play well and they stay healthy. I don't mind what he did. We'll have to see if we love what he did, but only production is going to prove that. Alex, before we wrap it up, this is your chance. Final say, final thoughts, final comments, any teams, any players you want to mention before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, so the overall theme of stuff that I'll be looking at the beginning of the year and probably most of the year will be, like I said, overs. This is going to be the season of overs, because look at how everything went last year. Obviously, with the condensed schedule, a lot of teams playing a lot of games, and we saw scoring drop off drastically, especially in the playoffs. And that's because teams were fatigued. This is going to be a whole different setup now. When we talk about the teams that are struggling, having goaltending issues, having defensive issues, it's about 7 or 8 teams. I'm looking at Edmonton, San Jose, Philly, Pittsburgh, Buffalo. These are going to be teams, Arizona. These are going to be teams that are going to be giving up a lot of goals, especially early. And the fact that we saw low-scoring games for the bulk of the season and definitely the postseason, books are not going to adjust right away with these totals. So we're going to get some great value, I feel like, with overs at the beginning of the year. Even a team like the New York Islanders, who pretty much have stayed pat, and are a defensive-minded team, but they've played a lot of hockey. Jimmy mentioned it earlier with Buffalo, or Boston rather, but look at how the Islanders back-to-back runs to the conference finals, with these condensed games and then being in the bubble and playing so much hockey over this time, so much important hockey, that can wear a team down. So even they might have some defensive lapses in a given night. So I think we're going to see a lot of scoring early, and that was always the case. You go back the last 3 or 4 full seasons, we always saw scoring early because, the offense, seemed to arrive first in the season and the defense comes in later. So that's something that I have circled down. Everybody watching this, I say circle that down we're going to be looking for some overs early and often in the first month, 2 months of the season.
All right, good. And I agree with a lot of that. I think you're going to see a sloppy hockey, pond hockey, more scoring, more goals early. I will briefly mention Edmonton, my last team. Honestly, this will be it. Zach Hyman, Warren Fogle. I like what they did. Thumbs up with the forward group. Zach Hyman, a great addition. Warren Fogle with Carolina. He was always one of my favorite underrated players for them up front for Carolina, especially at playoff time. Like what they did there. I don't love that they lost Larson, the Oilers on the blue line. Duncan Keith, good for the dressing room for sure. But, what's he got left at his age and this stage of his career on the ice is the question. And look, Mike Smith, is he going to be as good as he was last year? That's a question mark. So there's some good, some bad with Edmonton. Defense, what's Keith going to do? I like Nurse. I like Barry's brought back Cody Ceci. They have high hopes for this Evan Bouchard kid on their blue line. But the goaltending, could Smith be as good again? But I do like what they did with the forwards. You bring in Zach Hyman. What a fit he's going to be with McDavid. He'll do all the grunt work, just like he did for Matthews and Marner in Toronto. And Warren Fogle, a nice little signing as well from the Carolina Hurricanes. So just some thoughts on Edmonton. Jimmy, we'll get some thoughts from you now. Final thoughts for the free agency season.
Yeah, you brought up the Leafs there earlier. And, look, I got to watch these guys, Kasha and Richie. I think the Richie signing could work out for them there. He had a great regular season. He disappeared again in the playoffs a bit, but I think he might be able to help them a lot. Also bring some size on the power play down low. But I'm telling you guys, I would stay far, far away from Andre Kasha. This guy has, 5 concussions already in his career. He's not the brightest. He's very I'm just being honest. He's just by all accounts, he's not the brightest on the ice or off. I know it was cheap money. So like you said, it's low risk, high reward. And, hopefully for them, they get that high reward, but I wouldn't expect much from him. However, I think a signing that people aren't talking about enough, and I think it's a great signing because it gives you that great two-way checking center on your third line. And that's David Kampf. This guy's an underrated signing, guys. I think when we look back and all is said and done, we look back on this offseason, that might be a name we're talking about, especially in the playoffs. He's a guy that's going to help them a lot there. We know that's one of the things that they lack in is two-way hockey. So he's only a $1.5 million cap hit. I love that signing by the Leafs.
Yeah, there were a lot of people, too, that scribes of the team that said that was a good find and a good signing by Kyle Dubas and the management, and a good number as well in terms of the contract. So very interesting to see how that he makes that impact for the Leafs, but does, committed at both ends of the ice. So those are the kind of guys you want. We saw it with Tampa Bay, guys that are really good both ways, ends of the ice. You want those guys on your team, especially if you're going to win at playoff time. And that's the kind of guys you win with, for sure.
And with those Oilers, I think, you make a great point there. Obviously, Hyman's a great pickup there. They re-up with Barry. I think he'll help. He'll be a little more comfortable there. You got to know. I mean, he was kind of bouncing around for a bit there. So now he gets to settle in. He knows he's secure there. So I think he'll improve. But I think still going back to, we were already able to talk about it in our last time we met here. People can make fun of the Duncan Keith acquisition all they want because of his age and where he's at and everything right now. But when you bring character like that into a dressing room that clearly has been lacking it, character and leadership, that's what he's brought in for. That's it. They're not expecting him to come out and be Norris Trophy winning Duncan Keith. They just want him to guide this group and get them going the right direction and pass along some of the lessons they need to learn to win in the playoffs. So I think that's going to be one of those signings too, or acquisitions that we talk about later in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Oh, Winnipeg Jets. Have to mention it. Look,
forgot about the Jets.
I want to because, look, Cheveldayoff should have done this before the deadline last year. Otherwise, he could have had a better chance against Montreal in the second round. But that's neither here nor there. But finally addressed the blue line. Finally shored up the blue line. You had to add some depth there. They've definitely gone a long way to doing that. Nate Schmidt brought in. Brendan Dillon brought in from Washington. Defensemen that'll help them. They've played in playoff games. They're going to help the younger guys that are on this blue line, like Pionk, like DeMello, like Logan Stanley. All of a sudden, you've got a much deeper blue line, top to bottom, Winnipeg. So thumbs up, Kevin Cheveldayoff. I don't know why you waited until the offseason instead of the trade deadline last year to address this, because we were talking about this last year on this show, going into the trade deadline. That's not enough bringing in Jordy Ben to shore up the blue line. Not even close. I mean, and finally, it's been addressed though by Cheveldayoff here in the offseason at free agency. So bringing in Nate Schmidt, bringing in Brendan Dillon, I like those moves. Much better blue line on paper for the Winnipeg Jets. Quality and depth going into next season. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, for
Definitely.
sure.
Definitely. I just worry about their offense in that division, of course. Like I said, they're not going to be in the Canadian division anymore. They're back to the Central. So the teams they're going to have to face, they're going to have to, find some scoring. They won't be able to win the games 2-1, 3-2 night after night.
They need Dubois to step up big time.
Yeah, absolutely right. 100% right. 100,000%. Because you know what you're going to get from, Wheeler, and you know what you're going to get from Ehlers. Ehlers was outstanding. Kyle Connor's great. Stastny, he stays because injuries are catching up a little to him. So it's even more important. Yeah, that Pierre-Luc Dubois is a big time.
If he doesn't have a good year, I think it's fair to say then that it wasn't Tortorella's fault what went down in Columbus. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment there. I mean, if he comes out and plays the way he did after getting traded, well, look, then maybe it's more the player than it was the coach.
Yeah. And by the way, an interesting note, you mentioned Tortorella. They just signed him. ESPN just signed him to be an analyst. So that's going to be pretty interesting.
I did. All right. Yeah. Get the popcorn ready. Tortorella. Torts, unfiltered, unscripted, and breaking down games. I hope. Don't put a muzzle on him, ESPN, please. Yeah. Obviously, you can't swear and do all of that on air, but let him speak his mind. If he wants to rip a coach or a player, let him do it.
Or the rest.
Let him have the screen time. And let him get after it. We need more of this in these broadcasts. We need some excitement. That's why it's the NBA guys. I keep going back to them on TNT. Have been great for years. Shaq and Kenny and Charles. Yes. They'll call out Giannis. They'll call out Ben Simmons. They'll call out guys that don't play well and say, you got to be better. Or you're not good enough. And Torts will do that if you give him the rope to do it. If you give him the opportunity to do it, he will speak his mind. So ESPN just got a lot more exciting and interesting. Just these last couple hours with John Tortorella joining the NHL on ESPN coverage next season. Definitely looking forward to that. Hope you not only looked forward, but enjoyed our NHL free agency recap, a special edition of the Ice Guys presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. I can't say when we're going to be with you next because we're going to have a little bit of a dead zone period here for the NHL. But we'll be back in September, at some point, probably have a show, a week or two before the start of the season. When training camp opens, that's probably when we'll aim to do our next show. And then after that, it's going to be go time. Like, guys, 2 months, and another NHL season will be upon us. It's hard to believe that, but October is going to be here before you know it. So it won't be long before we're talking 2021-2022 NHL season. Before we wrap it up, reminder, download the DraftKings app, sign up for an account, use the promo code THPN. Of course, football season is right around the corner. The NHL will be back in 2 months. A great time to sign up for DraftKings. Download the app, sign up for an account. When you do that, you get bet boosts, weekly specials, weekly incentives, bet deposit bonuses as well. So make sure you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up for an account, and use the promo code THPN, our great sportsbook sponsors here at the Hockey Podcast Network. That'll wrap up this special NHL free agency recap edition of the Ice Guys. For Alex B. Smith and Jimmy Murphy, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy the summer. We'll be back in September, and hope you join us then. Thanks for watching this special edition of the Ice Guys presented by the Hockey Podcast Network.